Is coming to you from the beautiful metaverse, and more particularly beautiful Danville, Illinois. And welcome to Midday with Reverend Don. And thank you for joining me for this lovely midday conversation. And I love spending this time with you. I hope that you enjoy spending it with me. And if you'd like to be part of the conversation, you can type your questions or comments into whatever platform you may be watching this on, and they will appear in my chat room and we can speak directly. I'm also looking at possibilities to be able to bring people on with me for this or a similar broadcast where several of us can discuss ideas at once, which I think would be an interesting format. Last night I shared with people pictures of our new refrigerator. Yay. I want to thank the supporters who helped me to get the refrigerator. And you know, people have asked me, hello to Renee in the chat room. I mean, people are asking me how I'm doing, how I'm feeling, and you know, I'm getting settled in. I'm certainly feeling physically much better. Hello to Mary in the chat room. And you know, historically, I have not talked a lot about my personal feelings, and I'm not quite sure what the future holds in many ways. But in my newsletter that I put out for my Patreon supporters, I talked about the journey from thinking as we to thinking as me, to being an individual. And one of the things is I'm trying to focus a little more on how I feel. And people are asking me how I feel, and I'm working on that. I certainly feel a lot of good things for the future. And I have high hopes for the future. And I certainly will be here for the future. Hello to Brenda and hello to Janet in the chat room. Good to see you. But I don't know if I should talk more about how I feel about things. So I'm curious for whether that's something you would want me to do or not. Historically, I was generally one who kept their feelings to themselves, but it's been pointed out to me that that's not always the healthiest thing to do. But this is one of the personal things I'm mulling over at this point. People have asked me about some comments I made in the newsletter, and I'm debating whether I should clarify them. Elsewhere in the news, I announced yesterday the new book, Rev Don's Book of Questions, Volume 3. And in the newsletter, I had excerpts from that book dealing with some of the more interesting questions. Certainly not all of them, because there are 100 different questions, and they're all interesting. And you know, looking back, I think maybe I should have called it the Book of Answers, because the answers are actually the point. But it is the Book of Questions, and this is the third volume, and I think I'm going to make a set involving the 3 volumes. There is still a 4th volume, but I don't know when that will be coming out. This weekend, we are going to have the return of Lord Don's Library of Horror, featuring myself and Cosmo Rubiconis, and also the first Patreon seminar, which will be on Saturday. And this seminar will deal with the nature and practice of magic, and will basically be a discussion of this subject. It will be a seminar, but also a discussion, because at least of the people who I know are coming at this time, they're all already versed in this subject. And so it's probably not only the basics we'll be talking about. Mary says, I'd love to hear your personal take on things. So the answer is yes. Well, thank you, Mary. I will take this under advisement. And Lilith has come to the chat room. Hello, Lilith. How are you? And we will be doing that this weekend. So things are happening. Tomorrow, of course, is the summer solstice, or for some of our viewers, the winter solstice. And you know, I think one of the most important things I've learned later in my career as a Corellian priest was the importance of realizing that when it's summer solstice, here in the northern hemisphere, it's winter solstice in the southern hemisphere. And that this is relevant um, because when you look at these two sabbats together, they add additional insight to each other, and this is true of all of the sabbats. And Lilith says it's murderous hot here, and it just poured rain. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. It's rather warm here again, but not raining. We could probably use the rain, but not today. I was speaking with Susan Dancing Star yesterday about the possibility of going to some of the local scenic areas, which I think would be lovely, and perhaps I could share with you through video or photographs. I am hoping to start becoming more active that way. I find that since completing the move, I have a lot of things to catch up on, a lot of things to get done. But I am going to be expanding my activities as we go forward. And Lilith says it was between 90 and 95 Fahrenheit there in the Netherlands today, which is pretty warm. That's about what we are here in Illinois. That can be very warm. And but you know, this is part of our yearly cycle. So one of the things that I had to consider in coming back to Danville is that here there are winters. And one of the nice things about living in Florida had been the lack of a winter by Illinois standards. And hello to Acidonius in the chat room. It's good to see you, Acidonius. But I figured, you know, I lived with winter most of my life, so I could live with it again. And the other thing is, of course, in the summer, it's not really any cooler. It's not like we make up for the winter by having a cool summer. It's just relatively extreme in both seasons. But you definitely do get that sense of the seasons passing that is much less the case in places like Florida. I will say in many ways I'm not looking forward to winter, but we'll see what happens. And you know, winter definitely is a more appealing phenomenon when you don't have to be out in it every day, catching buses and the like. Hello to Bradley in the chat room. You know, I can remember living in Chicago for many years and using the bus system in the dead of winter. And you know, it certainly wasn't that that problematic, but I do remember being very glad for the heated bus stops, the bus shelters. And I remember one of them on Sheridan Avenue had these two spiders that lived up in the corner. And I'm not certain if they were or were not black widows, but that was the only thing they really looked like. But they never bothered me, so I didn't worry about them. And Mary says, you forget about the seasons living here. And yes, that is kind of true. There are seasons, but they're very much less pronounced. And hello to Jason in the chat room. Good to see you, Jason. And bringing us back to the relevance of the two sabbats in the two hemispheres, one of the things I think it makes us mindful of is how local these things really can be. I know that you experience the seasons differently in Florida. You were experiencing them differently in Africa, differently in South America, differently in Australia, differently in California versus the Midwest versus Canada. I remember I had a Canadian friend as a teenager who showed me a photo of his house from the previous winter. The snow was over the roof of the house, which mercifully I've never experienced in Illinois. But apparently his family just took it in stride. But when we talk about weather, when we talk about seasons, I think too often we only think about our own, and of course, in honoring the spirit of place, in honoring our relationship to our place, it is our own we should be thinking about. But when thinking existentially, when writing or speaking to a large audience, you have to remember they aren't necessarily having the same experiences. Um, and that it's the sum of our experiences that create the whole. So for me, when I think of the summer and the winter solstice at the same time, it speaks to me about the inner nature of the solstice, which is transformation and change. When I think of Beltane and Samhain at the same time, it speaks to me about the idea of the gate of the year, um, and the moving from life to death to life. Um, I don't. I find unity in their opposite natures, and I think that that really is the name of the game in understanding existence. That it's finding that commonality while recognizing the difference that gives us the true meaning. And I often talk about about virtue and all things as lying in the middle path. That extremity is never the true meaning of a thing, but that it's always the center where you find the true meaning. That doesn't always mean that extremity is bad, although at a certain point it certainly will become so. But well, if we look at color, for example, what is the color blue? Well, I think at least if you're thinking as an artist, you're going to think of a nice medium true blue. But at one extreme will be indigo, and the other extreme will be a pale sky blue. And they can be taken farther still till at one end they become white and the other end they can become black. Neither white nor black is blue. They've become too extreme in that continuum. And while both sky blue and indigo blue are blue, they are hardly the definition of blue. When we talk about any given quality, I think that we find the truth of that quality there in the middle of it. And when I speak about this, I usually point out that there are always people who will say, oh, but you can never have too much of X. But I think that everything can be too much. An example is you can never have too much compassion, but in fact, too much compassion can enable truly bad behaviors. Too much compassion becomes self-negation, which I don't think is a good thing. Too little compassion is obvious in what's wrong with it. But there's a certain point at which too much prevents you from taking needed action. So even something as good as compassion, which is almost always good, but it can become bad. So when we look at that wheel of the year, when we look at the nature of our mysteries, I think that by comparing or making a comparison between the two halves of that wheel, we in fact deepen our knowledge of both halves. And that's how I've approached ritual for many years now. Now, in doing physical ritual, which I expect to be doing here in Danville, probably beginning at Lammas, I don't know that I'll approach it that way because I'm physically here. But in doing ritual observance online, for example, where there may be people from all over, I certainly intend to continue the practice of acknowledging both the northern and the southern hemisphere at once, because I think not only is it good to acknowledge everyone who's present, and we know, for example, on this midday broadcast that there are people in the chat room who are from the southern hemisphere. Of course, we want to address them as well as the people from the northern hemisphere. but I think that it expands everyone's understanding to do so. Um, and Lilith has returned now on YouTube, or now on Facebook, earlier on YouTube. And welcome back, Lilith. So, these are some of my thoughts today. And I find myself in a very reflective mood. In some ways, we were talking about emotions earlier. In some ways, I'm only just now getting settled in enough to stop and ask myself, how do I really feel about certain things? When you're in motion, it can be hard to do that. And also, again, talking about that change from we to I, throughout most of my life, if not in fact all of my life, I have thought as a representative of the we. I have weighed my actions against what's good for the group, not just myself. Now, in retirement, I can think of myself, and this is a new thing in some ways to do. And hello to Anna in the chat room. Anna says, thank you for this calming and inspiring interlude in my day. That's very sweet, Anna. Thank you. And you're just the role model I need at this moment. That's very kind of you to say. And apparently for Lilith, the video has stopped. Is anyone else having that problem? Let me take a quick look and see if I can see myself if there's an issue. No, it's working just fine on when I go to look at it on my page. So you might want to leave the page and come back, perhaps. But as I was saying, I've spent a lot of time being diplomatic, being political, because it was necessary for my role in life, but it's not really necessary now. Even though, I do retain certain status, nonetheless, I am in retirement from daily life, and I can look at my life for a change. I mean, anyone who knows how I've lived for many years knows that I was making. I think they'd have to agree. It was obvious I was making my choices based on we, not on I. Now it can be I, and that changes a bit about how I express things. I haven't entirely come to that change yet, but I see it, and also some of the choices that I would make. So this is something that I'm working on in my personal life, and hopefully it's something that you want to share, because I'm likely to continue sharing it as I come to a better understanding of it. I mean, how do I feel about the changes in my life that have taken place in these recent months? And again, I feel very good about the future. I feel like there are a lot of good things happening and more coming. And the projects that are now on my plate, which are drastically different, are things I'm enthused about, things that I think are going to be wonderful. I think Psychic Academy is going to be a great adventure. It means creating a new 3-year curriculum on psychic arts, which is something in which I've got decades of experience and have written about extensively, but not always in its own right. So that's going to be fascinating. Working more with Corellian Publishing is going to be fascinating. And having less to do with bureaucracy and the needs it imposes is also probably a good thing. On the other hand, how I got here was not necessarily as I would have chosen it. Now, Bradley in the chat room says, I is powerful. It doesn't mean isolation. It means the authentic you can now engage with the world more truthfully. It's about balance. we will always have its place in terms of collaboration. That's exactly so. And there's still many we things in my life. Bradley goes on to say, but I is your personal I is where your personal symphony is composed. That's a great way to put it. Partly because I took up the offices that I have held so early in life. My we was a lot more developed than my I. For years, people would ask me what I enjoyed separate from my work. And although there were some answers, there wasn't a lot because there was no separate from my work. Now there will be, and I don't know yet what will fill those moments. I've talked about the fact I watch YouTube and Instagram, but that's not really the answer to that question. I enjoy music, but one of the things I'm looking forward to here in Danville, I know there is a local theater which I have been to in the past, the far past, and known people who performed in the far past. But I'm hoping to attend it in the future. There is, and I'm referring to the Catherine Randolph Theater. There's also the Fisher Theater, which is a historic theater that's been the subject of a great deal of attention in the last couple of decades, having been saved from ruin at the last moment and restored to its former grandeur, which is wonderful. And conveniently, it is located in downtown Danville, which perhaps did make it the ideal candidate for that. It was certainly not the grandest theater in town, but it is the one that was saved. And that's good. And it was wonderful to see people come together to do that. So I'm hoping to perhaps attend some things there. But I mentioned going to some local nature areas with Susan Dancing Star. That will be lovely. So I'm hoping to do more of this and share it with you when I do it. But moving from the old life to the new life is going to be an adventure. It will be an interesting process. So do expect to share that as well as these other things. And it's like not wearing a tie. I stopped wearing the ties after my cardiac event because it was suggested to me that it might not be good for me health-wise to do that. That having something tight around the neck would probably not be the best thing. So I have not been doing that. I will probably wear ties to Parliament and other formal occasions, but I've stopped doing it in daily life, which has been something to get used to. And I've been experimenting with what to do, mostly wearing necklaces, which is a reversion to an older style, which is why I have so many of them. But I've been quite enjoying the process of changing that aspect of my image. And often historically, people have asked me to adopt a more casual image, which really does not really reflect my personality, but a little more casual, yes. And so I'm curious to know what people would like to see in terms of changes to the image. I know some people have asked me to be perhaps a little more magical in my appearance, but I would say that some of the jewelry that I'm wearing is a step in that direction. I'm looking at doing some video of the mini spells in which I'm planning to probably wear robes for a more magical appearance. So I'm experimenting with different things and we'll see where they take me. Now, Kim in the chat room says that from her experience, a sudden health emergency opened her eyes about how quickly everything can change. It's different to experience this versus watching someone else experience it or even thinking about it happening to yourself. And this is very true. And Lilith says that I look good without the ties. Thank you, Lilith. And Mary says, please wear what you're comfortable with. But I learned the last time that I had been a thinner person, because I've lost a lot of weight since this happened, that I did have to change my style because I just didn't look the same and the clothes had a different effect on me. I haven't lost as much weight as I would like. I'd like to lose maybe another 30, 40 pounds. Um, and Anna says, I like your style. It's one of the things that drew me to you. And Mary says, I like the necklaces. And Lilith says, you can wear jewelry instead of ties. And yeah, I'm enjoying the jewelry. You know, what I liked about the ties was that they were a creative expression. And the jewelry certainly is too. So if you like that look, I certainly will continue it. And Lilith says, I see a shopping trip for new clothes in your future, and certainly before Parliament, that must take place. Because I've simply lost too much weight not to do that. Although, for the most part, my clothes do fit at this point. My jackets do not, however. They're fine for broadcasting. And in fact, I still wear them out occasionally, but they're still the ones I had before. But you know, I found years ago, because when I injured my back, I also lost a great deal of weight that I only gradually regained. But I noticed that I looked very different in the same clothes as a thinner man, although I was younger then. But it looked much more costumey as a smaller man than as a larger man, which I assume is a kind of cultural trope. But you know, I'm enjoying the jewelry, and as long as others are enjoying it, I certainly will continue to pursue that look. And now, when we go back to the difference between I and we, is that an I or a we thing when I say that? And I think in this case, it's an I decision because I do care about how people respond to my appearance. Obviously, I wouldn't dress as I dress if I didn't. I've always considered that. I was raised to consider that a very important thing. So what if I were creating a negative impression, I would certainly want to change that. So you see, I am thinking about the difference between I versus we. Because I did ask myself, if I'm asking people's opinion, am I giving away that I power back to the we? But I don't think so because I'm asking their opinion. I'm not asking for a consensus decision. But it seems like most people agree this is a good look. I enjoy this look. I think we'll stay with this look. And wearing my hair down more often. I could be wrong, but my impression is that I certainly feel more vital when I wear my hair down. I didn't today, but it depends how wet my hair is from how recently it was washed, whether I can do that without looking like I just climbed out of a lake. Because my hair is long and it does not dry especially quickly, except sometimes in the hottest parts of summer. And you know, when I was putting together Reverend Don's Book of Questions, Volume 3, one of the questions is the question about hair. And I don't remember now if the question was about why I wear my hair long or what I thought about the idea of wearing long hair as a spiritual practice and whether that's what I do. And my answer was basically yes. I do think of this as a spiritual thing. And Lilith asks, have I ever thought of a shorter hairdo? And yes, I have worn my hair shorter in my time. I don't think I ever would again wear it in a short style because the last time I actually had it cut short, I found that I woefully missed having a tail. Because I don't know about other people with long hair, but I play with the tail. And when it wasn't there, the last time I actually had a short hairstyle, I noticed that. I won't swear I would never do it because one of the aspects of hair in a spiritual sense is that, you know, it has a lot to do with energy and magic, and cutting it can also, if you want to make a strong break with something, cutting your hair is a very powerful magical way to do that. This is why you see people shaving their hair in certain religions to make a break with the world or with certain events. This is why in many cultures around the world, not just certain ones, but a number of them, there was a custom um, for a widow to cut her hair when her husband died as a sign of mourning that loss, and also to determine the time when she could end that mourning. But in terms of a magical release, I imagine that was quite powerful. In Egypt, there was a custom, at least in certain periods, where the widow would cut her hair and make an offering to the spirit of the deceased husband of her hair. Now, did the men do this when they lost their wife? Depends where you were. Some did, and it would have had a similar effect. When we look at Buddhist monks, or for that matter, Roman Catholic nuns, who either shave or cut their hair very short when they take religious vows, this is about making a break with the world. So cutting your hair can be very effective for that. So if there were a reason I felt the need to make such an action, I might consider doing that. But short of that, I don't think I would ever go to short hair. Now, shorter, yes. I have it trimmed every now and then because the ends break and become unhealthy if you don't trim it. Bradley says, I love your long hair. And so do I. But, you know, so a number of years ago, when we did lustration in England, I decided that I wanted to substantially trim my hair to grow it out with healthier ends again. And not being familiar with the stylist I had gone to, I apparently was not clear in what I actually wanted. Because I was asking for basically shoulder length hair, which would allow me to wear it down more easily than I could at that moment, but still pull it back. But what I got was much shorter than that. And I was a little startled by that. But that's not the time I noticed the loss of the tail. That was probably 30 years ago, the last time I had a legitimately short hairstyle. So I don't see losing the tail. Now, I've known some people who shaved their head except for the ponytail, which I guess is one way of having the toy handy while having short hair. But I can't see shaving my head as a regular thing either. I like my hair, and I like the fact that I have it. Not that there's anything wrong with being bald, but I like being able to play with my hair. I like the fact that I can do things with it if I want to. I haven't done anything unusual with it in a long time. But when I was younger, I sometimes would, and I may again, we'll see. One of the things I'm doing is I'm trying to grow out the front, which for a long time I've kept short, but tried to keep it blended into the long back. But I'm thinking I'm going to see if I can't grow it all out. We'll see if I can stand the intermediate phase. But you know, this is all part of that new life, that new look, that new direction that I'm taking. Who knows? One day you might even see me without a beard, but if you do, it won't be very long, because I'll start growing it right back. But when I was younger, I would shave it every now and then, just to see where I was at. I haven't done that for a very long time. Hello to Cheryl May in the chat room. Good to see you, Cheryl May. And I think at this point, I would find myself much older than I was previously. And Brenda says the intermediate phase of growing hair out is very, very annoying. And yes, it is. And maybe even worse, because the likelihood is that phase would hit around the same time as the Parliament, and therefore I wouldn't be able to leave it. Because what happens for me is that it ends up coming behind the ear, which is fine until it comes down below the ear, and then I have difficulty with it. And Cheryl May says it's raining here in Calgary. it's very warm here in Danville, not rainy, and it's very warm in the Netherlands, but was rainy. And so I love the fact that we have such a geographically diverse audience for this program. And you know, one of the Instagrams I've been following is called Schiffer Diane. Um, and it is this very nice older lady who just talks about pleasant things and has an obsession with vintage objects and vintage clothing, and has a very interesting, diverse family that she talks about. Um, but she treats her Instagram as if people are coming to her home. And you know, that's kind of how I feel about this program. That that this is kind of like having people over for lunch, except without the lunch. But it's lovely to see everyone every day, to have this time together. And I thank you for that. I thank you for joining me. I love you all. I love this time that we spend together. And I'll be back, of course, tomorrow. I see we've come to slightly past the end of our half hour. Um, but you know, it's been a lovely talk today. And you know, some talks take more than half an hour. But I hope that you're enjoying spending this time with me, and I'll look forward to seeing you again. And let us close with our prayer. And Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we ask you to help us to see the things that are important in our lives. Help us to embrace the things that bring us joy and pleasure, and to learn the lessons of and release the things that bring us difficulty. Help us to go forward with love and joy, and to embrace the beauties of the world. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you for your presence now and always. We know you are always with us, but from respect, we thank you for being here. And until next time, may you blessed be. And I thank you for being here, and I love you all. I love this time we spend together. I'll look forward to seeing you again, and until next time, may you blessed be.